I can't think of an appropriate introduction to this one, so let's just get into it. The Way Home. This is a book. It's actually a collection of two shorter. Well, I guess one would be a short story. The other might count as a novella. I'm not sure. By Peter S. Beagle, set in the world of The Last Unicorn. Now, if you didn't know, I haven't talked about it for a long time. The Last Unicorn is one of my favorite books. I grew up watching the movie, and I enjoy the movie quite a bit. And I read the book in my 30s and was astounded by it. I think it's one of the most beautiful written works I've ever read. I adore that book. And I was more than a little nervous to see if the author, Peter S. Beagle, could revisit that setting and make it work. Short answer, he does. Although I think depending on what you want out of this, you may come away a bit frustrated and or disappointed by the second and much longer of the two stories. So the first one, which is called The Two Hearts, that one has direct ties in with The Last Unicorn. It has a number of characters return from that book. It is told from the perspective of a new character named Suze, who is a young girl who is going to try and find help to have someone come to her village and kill the griffin that keeps stealing children and eating them. So she goes forth with basically no plan to go ask the king, please come help. Because knights have been sent, they haven't helped. They've all died. So she wants to go to the king himself. She doesn't have any real idea of why this might work, but it's what she's determined to do, and she is very stubborn. And on the way there, she runs into Molly Grew and Schmendrick. And then eventually reaching the king, it is Lear, who was a prince in The Last Unicorn. And I don't want to go into too many more details about it. It's different in that it is first person perspective, from the perspective of Suze, but the way that it is written, while having that sense of a specific character's voice, this is very much the world that the first novel exists in. It recaptures everything beautifully, and it is wonderful and funny and uplifting and heartbreaking. It is all the things I would want anything connected to The Last Unicorn to be. And I did cry openly, especially towards the tail end. This is a wonderful story. The second story I think is going to be a harder swallow for a lot of people, but I still really like it. The second one is just called Suze. It is significantly longer and only follows the character of Suze. Again, from her perspective, first person story. There are no other returning elements from The Last Unicorn in that story. It is still set in that world. You still get that sense of place, but literally nothing recurs. No creature returns that we have seen before, no character returns other than Suze. It's just her and her family are the only people, and we only met them in the previous story. So if you were to read Suze without having read Two Hearts, you would go, who the hell is this and what is going on? This might be more accurately called kind of a spin-off from The Last Unicorn. Two Hearts is a follow-up. It is a follow-up that, while not focusing on them, it is through the lens of a new character. It is touching on and giving us a view of characters that we know from the book. Whereas Suze is 100% about a character only introduced in the previous story and not in the original novel, on a completely unique adventure. And this adventure being that she tries to find her long-lost sister that she didn't know she had, but she has a moment and a vision and an impulse that she has an older sister, 4 years older, that when she was 4, when the sister was 4, she was taken by what get referred to as the Dreamies, because that's what Sue's sister called them when she was 4, it's the fair folk, it's the fae, it's the fairies. She went with them willingly. I almost said they took her. No, she went with them. And so Suze gets it in her head, much like she did before when she was younger, and she is a bit older in this, some years older, but still young. She's 17 in this story. Much like she got into her head, I'm going to go and get the king to deal with this griffin, she gets into her head, I'm going to go and get my sister back. And she goes forth into the lands of the Dreamies, and she encounters someone who is, boy, she's hard to explain. She's a woman made of stone. And I don't know, it's so hard trying to explain the beautiful simplicity with which Peter S. Beagle writes things. Because she is a woman of stone, but I don't mean she's made of stone. I don't mean she's like a living statue, like she's a person, but she is stone. She doesn't need to eat. She doesn't need to drink. And she's searching for death because a stone doesn't die. And there's also this distance because, you know, a stone can't love either, in theory. Who knows? But Suze gets ever closer with her as they go deeper into this land, and she looks for her sister. And I don't want to say any more than that. But it goes on for a bit. It is a little bit more long-winded, but in that way that I think works with something very much trying to feel like and evoke fairy tales and folklore. Because it's not rambling necessarily, but the way that it is told is in a sort of loose way of telling, like you would expect someone to say when telling you the story out loud, as opposed to having written it down. It has that feeling and that energy and that cadence. And the previous story had that a little, but here it feels a little bit more prominent. And while this one didn't quite hit my heartstrings as with a sledgehammer the way the previous story does, the very last line of it, it got me. And it's funny. It's funny because I knew it was winding down. And I actually thought, well, this one didn't make me cry, but it's still good. And then I got to the last couple of lines, and then they got me. I'm like, son of a... Damn it, Beagle, you got me right down to the wire, right at the last minute. I'll also note I listened to the audiobook for this, and the reader for the audiobook is, I'll put her name here. She's wonderful. She does such a good job. She has a perfect voice and cadence and way of speaking for stories like this. She's phenomenal. So I didn't go too much into plot specifics or the beats that I really love, because I feel like this is something that I'm going to talk about here that not a ton of people have read or have heard. And honestly, I would say there's no reason to read or listen to these if you haven't read or listened to, I suppose, the novel The Last Unicorn. If you know nothing about The Last Unicorn, this has absolutely no value to you. If you've only ever watched the movie, first of all, read the book. And yes, audiobook counts as reading. Read the book. And if you like that, then yes, I would say seek this out. Just know what you're getting with each story. Because as I said, only the first one will actually follow up on the characters. And the second one is a whole new thing, but with a very, very, very similar energy that feels complementary to the other two. And I thought this was wonderful. Hey, it's Vera during the edit. I gotta drop one thing in here that I'm shocked I forgot to bring up. But in the second story, Suze, there is an alluded to assault on the main character. It is thankfully non-graphic, but it does get referenced again a few times, and I honestly have no idea why it's there. I kind of get it insofar as when she encounters a traveling companion, she has to be at a low point, but there were other ways to do that. So consider that your warning on that particular issue. The Way Home. Anybody else read this? What did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe. Those all help me out. Don't worry too much about it, though. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can just come on back next time you need a break. And now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfula, Goddess Elida, Oliver B., Melissa Pedersen, Tarak, the thing that goes joint in the anime, Jean Foray, Ulrich Bogdan, Loki Eris, Linda Walters, Jen, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Renabulax the Poodle, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperol, Dave Hall, Quite Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Toku Bluhuvian, Pal Barabajoggle, and Mara G. If you'd like to hear your name in the credits, or even just see them, there are rewards on the Patreon, so maybe check those out.